Yu-Gi-Oh! Is no stranger to raising the stakes for otherwise harmless games. Anytime a game turns into a shadow game, the loser must play a penalty game, which in other words it means inflicting some sort of punishment on them. And you might think, well, what could be worse than dying from a game? But you'd be surprised how cruel these penalty games can be. Let's count them down.
Number 10.
At number 10, we have the Mosaic Illusion. This is a penalty game inflicted on a ZTV director who staged a bullying documentary at Yugi's school. But in private with the cameras off, he beats up Jonichi when he confronts the director about the documentary being a sham. As punishment for losing a dice game with Yami, Yami inflicted the Mosaic Illusion penalty, which caused the director's vision to pixelate like that of a censored TV. While this penalty game isn't as physically brutal as some others, what qualifies it for the top 10 list is that A, it effectively causes the director to go blind, and B, unlike most of the other penalties, this one appears to be permanent.
Number 9.
At number 9, we have Amit. This is a penalty game inflicted on anyone who fails the test of the Millennium Scale, and we specifically see it when Shadi inflicts it on a museum curator who Shadi judges to have defiled the tombs of the pharaohs to satiate his own greed. As punishment, the curator's chair turns into Amit, a crocodile-esque monster born from the vices within a person, such as greed. In truth though, Amit is an illusion, actually presiding within the curator's soul room. This of course doesn't make the sensation any less cruel, as the curator feels Amit devouring him from the inside until he dies. On the outside though, his death appears to have been by heart attack.
Number 8.
At number 8, we have the Illusion of Zombies. This is a penalty game shown in an episode exclusive to the Toei anime inflicted by Yami Yugi upon the corrupt Dr. Goyu, who has had several patients die under his care and threatened Jonichi to dismiss his sister Shizuka from the hospital if he didn't keep quiet. After Yami Yugi defeats the doctor in a golf game, the penalty creates an illusion whereby the doctor suffers visions of being attacked by zombies resembling his former patients. While this is an illusion, it's the first of the entries on this list that plays to the psychological aspect of penalty games, tormenting the doctor with his past murders. But instead of feeling remorse, the doctor goes crazy as he maniacally admits aloud while laying on the hospital floor that he loves golf more than caring for his patients.
Number 7.
At number 7, we have Mind Doll, a punishment that Yami Bakura inflicts on the friends who play Monster World with Bakura. This penalty traps the soul of a person inside a figurine that is then made a permanent fixture of Bakura's game. Unless of course he decides to destroy it for good. While Yami Yugi is able to save everyone from their imprisonment, this penalty is otherwise a permanent limbo for the recipient, not killing them, but forcing them to live a life trapped inside a figurine in a board game. Just imagine, you're alive but not alive, aware of your surroundings but unable to interact with anything, eat, sleep, nothing. And every now and then people play with you without a clue, all the while you're screaming, hey, I'm a real boy, but not a soul can hear you.
Number 6.
At number 6, we have the Dark Abyss. This is a penalty game inflicted on the player killer of darkness, or Panic, by Yami Yugi as a way to punish him for attacking duelists at Duelist Kingdom in the Shroud of Night like a coward. Now, bear in mind that this penalty doesn't take place in the anime, where Yami Yugi simply mind crushes Panic. No, this punishment was clearly too cruel to be animated, and involves Panic being hung, which is a pretty gruesome punishment for losing a card game, but the hanging doesn't kill Panic. Instead, he falls down a never-ending abyss. That's right, Panic is still falling down some endless rabbit hole to this day, and that's what I mean when I say a fate worse than death.
Number 5.
At number 5, we have the Hourglass of Horror. This is a bit of a tricky one because there are components both from the manga and anime that make it cruel in their respective versions. Inflicted by Yami Malik upon Mai, Mai is forced into an hourglass that slowly fills with insects that will devour her brain over the course of 24 hours, killing her unless Malik is defeated before then. In the anime, the bugs are instead sand, but the real penalty is the psychological punishment of Mai living out her deepest fear of being alone as she helplessly watches her friends have the time of their lives without her. Take your pick, brain-devouring insects or psychological torment, but either way, this is a rather cruel penalty that even though Mai survives, leaves her mentally scarred.
Number 4.
At number 4, we have TikTok. No, this doesn't mean you're forced to watch Gen Z dancing for hours on end. Instead, this is a penalty inflicted on a guy named Shotaro for having stolen Miho's watch from Honda. Shotaro is an obsessive watch collector, so when the latest product sells out, he swipes it. After Yami-Yugi defeats him in a game, the penalty inflicted has got to be one of the more painful ones, as the watches Shotaro wears on his arms are now embedded into his arms, and the rest of his body becomes a giant clock, from the gears in his palms to the face of clocks in his eyes. This punishment drives Shotaro to insanity, as the last we see of him is smashing his watch collection while his mother cries in vain.
Number 3.
At number 3, we have the Telltale Heart. Okay, that's not actually the name, but it is reminiscent of that short story by Edgar Allan Poe where a murderer's guilt drives him crazy because he can't stop hearing the heart of his victim. The way this penalty game works though is that Sozoji, a dude who coerces people into paying to see him perform his ear-bleeding singing, is forced to hear his ever-growing heartbeat like a drum in his mind. Similar to some of the other illusion-based penalties, it's unclear how long this punishment lasts, but imagine for days or even weeks not being able to hear anything but the deafening sound of your ever-amplifying heartbeat.
Number 2.
At number 2, we have being set on fire. This is a game Yami-Yugi plays with an escaped prisoner in order to punish him for holding Burger World hostage, threatening to kill Anzu, and escaping his death row sentence. In the manga, the convict is set on fire, so a rather gruesome way to die, but in the anime it's arguably even worse because the fire is an illusion. So just imagine you think you're burning alive and it just keeps going and you're crying out to people around you for help, but they just stare at you like you're crazy.
Honorable mention.
For the honorable mention, we have the Handgun. Nope, not these. This. This is a penalty inflicted on Bandit Keith by Pegasus because he cheated during his duel versus Jonachi. Bandit Keith attempts to attack Pegasus, but Pegasus turns Keith's hand into a gun, which then, against Bandit Keith's will, points itself to his temple, shooting and killing him. While an instant death may be favorable compared to some other penalties, the cruel nature of this punishment really lies in the moments where your own hand is about to kill you, and you can't do anything to stop it. That's a crazy level of torment, but thankfully a swift one.
Number 1.
And at number 1, we have the experience of death. What is definitively worse than dying? Thinking you're dying, then coming back to life, only to die again and again. This is a penalty inflicted by Yami-Yugi on Kaiba for stealing his grandpa's blue eyes, then trying to use it as if it were his own. The penalty creates the illusion for Kaiba that he is a Duel Monsters card, repeatedly being killed by other Duel Monsters. Just imagine being constantly blasted by blue eyes or cut up by battle axe. The saving grace of the experience of death is that it is temporary, but still scarring Kaiba enough to have recurring nightmares, which spurred him to create his own artificial experience of death, which would cause a human to go mad if exposed long enough. So perhaps the cruelest part of this penalty game is not being killed by monsters, but the monster it turns you into. So that does it for the top 10 cruelest penalty games. It's crazy to see the lengths people will go to just to rub it in the face of someone who loses a game, but these are dark games for a reason. Comment below what are your top penalties and which ones you absolutely would not want inflicted on you. Make sure to subscribe and share this video with 5 other people, or else you will be faced with a penalty game.